Imagine a sea so vast it was once a lifeline for millions, but now it's nearly gone, leaving nothing but toxic dust and a ruined landscape. The Aral Sea, once the fourth largest inland body of water on Earth, has shrunk by nearly 90% over the last 50 years. This isn't just an environmental tragedy. It's a political story that stretches across borders and decades. What happened to the Aral Sea, and how did it become one of the world's most devastating man-made disasters? Welcome to a story of environmental devastation, poor political decisions, and human consequences. The Aral Sea, located between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, was once one of the largest bodies of fresh water in the world. It provided a source of food, income, and a stable climate for the people who lived around it. Today, it's a shadow of its former self. Its waters receded, leaving behind only a barren, salty desert. In this video, we'll explore the history of the Aral Sea, how politics and geopolitics contributed to its destruction, and what, if anything, can be done to save it. Let's dive in. Before the environmental disaster began, the Aral Sea was an important geographical feature. Located in Central Asia, it straddled the borders of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. The sea was once about 68,000 square kilometers in size, making it the fourth largest inland body of water on Earth. It supported a booming fishing industry and was vital for the region's economy. In addition to its economic importance, the Aral Sea was a source of moisture that helped stabilize the local climate. For centuries, local communities thrived by fishing and trading goods across the sea, and it was integral to the way of life for millions of people. The tragedy of the Aral Sea began in the 1960s under Soviet rule. The Soviet Union, in its bid to make Central Asia a major cotton-producing region, decided to divert the rivers that fed the Aral Sea, the Amu Darya and Sirdarya, into irrigation channels. This decision was made to fuel the Soviet Union's push for cotton cultivation, one of the key crops the state relied on for industrial growth. The Soviets constructed massive irrigation projects to direct water away from the Aral Sea and into the surrounding desert for agricultural purposes. This was done on a grand scale, with little regard for the long-term consequences. The result? The Aral Sea began to shrink at an alarming rate. By the late 1970s, the first signs of trouble were becoming clear. The Aral Sea's water level was dropping rapidly, and the once thriving fishing industry began to collapse. By 1989, the sea had shrunk by 50%, and by the 2000s, it had lost nearly 90% of its original size. The environmental impact was devastating. Without the steady flow of water, the sea began to dry up, leaving behind a vast, desolate wasteland. The once fertile fishing grounds turned into salt flats, and toxic dust from the exposed seabed was blown by winds into surrounding communities. This dust contained chemicals from pesticides used in agriculture, which posed a major health risk to the population. Local fishermen lost their livelihoods, and the climate became harsher, with rising temperatures and drier conditions. For the people living near the Aral Sea, the effects were felt almost immediately. The once productive landscape became a toxic desert, and entire ecosystems were destroyed. The environmental collapse of the Aral Sea is not just an ecological disaster, it's also a story of political mismanagement and border disputes. As the sea shrank, it affected two countries, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, both of which had a vested interest in the waters of the Amu Darya and Sirdarya. The Soviet decision to divert the rivers was made without any real regard for the impact on local populations or future generations. The diversion projects were centrally controlled in Moscow, and the local governments had little say in the decision-making process. After the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, both Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan inherited the consequences of the disastrous policies that led to the drying up of the Aral Sea. While both countries have made efforts to address the problem, cooperation has been slow. Disagreements over water usage, particularly the sharing of the remaining water in the Amu Darya and Sirdarya rivers, have continued to strain relations between the two nations. The Aral Sea disaster highlights the complex interplay between environmental degradation, political decisions, and international borders. In recent years, efforts to revive parts of the Aral Sea have gained some traction, though the situation remains dire. In Kazakhstan, the government has focused on restoring the northern part of the sea, which has seen some success. The creation of the Aral Dam in 2005 helped raise the water levels in the northern basin and has allowed for some limited regrowth of the ecosystem. Despite these efforts, the southern part of the Aral Sea, which lies in Uzbekistan, remains almost entirely dried up. The ecological damage in this region is immense, and experts argue that it may be too late to restore the sea to its former state. The Aral Sea is now one of the most stark examples of environmental mismanagement in history. What was once a thriving natural resource is now a symbol of how politics, economic ambitions, and human negligence can destroy the planet's fragile ecosystems. The tragedy of the Aral Sea serves as a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of our environment, politics, and economies. The decisions made in the 1960s continue to affect millions of people today, and the lessons learned from this disaster are critical for future generations. As the world faces increasingly severe environmental challenges, the Aral Sea's fate serves as a cautionary tale. The tragedy isn't just about the loss of a body of water, it's about the lives disrupted, the ecosystems destroyed, and the long-term consequences of neglecting environmental balance for short-term economic gain. As we look back on the story of the Aral Sea, we're reminded of how quickly a natural resource can be lost. It's a tragic example of how human decisions can have long-lasting, often irreversible effects. The Aral Sea isn't just a body of water, it's a symbol of environmental stewardship gone wrong, and a warning to the world about the importance of balancing progress with sustainability. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the history of the Aral Sea. It's a story that has captivated the world, not just because of the scale of the environmental disaster, but because it's a reminder of our responsibility to protect the planet. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want more stories about the environment, history, and global issues. And let me know, what do you think should be done to prevent more disasters like this in the future? I'll see you in the next video.